I was 26, and I had one final exam left before finishing my bachelor's degree in finance. I was behind on everything because I worked 2 part-time jobs just to keep myself afloat while living in my parents' house. I didn't have the kind of life where people just focused on school. I was always juggling survival, and I never had a quiet space. Ever. I sat at my tiny desk in the corner of the dining room, headphones in, highlighters everywhere, coffee already cold. I kept rereading the same macroeconomics model again and again because my brain was exhausted from existing in constant fight mode in this house. Please subscribe to our channel and tell us in comments from where are you watching this video. My sister Brielle walked downstairs in silk shorts and a fluffy robe like she was some Beverly Hills princess. She yawned dramatically, rolled her eyes at my open textbooks, and gave me that same fake bored stare she always gave me. "You're still doing that college thing?" she said like I was playing with crayons. "Dad said it's cringe how you still try." It stung, but I didn't react. I'd learned reacting gave them entertainment. She shrugged her shoulders. "I need to sleep soon. I have a 9 a.m. hair appointment. You're not going to make noise tonight, right?" She wasn't asking. She was ordering. I said quietly, "Brielle, this is my last exam. I need this to graduate. Just one more night of studying." She turned around like I'd personally insulted her royalty. "You act like your little degree matters more than my appearance," she scoffed. "Be serious, Nova. The world doesn't care if you pass a test. My face actually has value." And she walked upstairs. I stared at my notes again, feeling that burning in my chest that I always suppressed. Because this house made everything I did feel like a joke, like I wasn't a real person, like my goals were imaginary. At 1:15 a.m. I heard footsteps pounding down the stairs. Dad stormed in, angry already, like someone injected rage into his bloodstream. "Why are you still up?" he yelled. "I'm studying," I whispered. "Just one more hour, I'm almost done." Dad got in my face like I was his property. "Your sister needs quiet for her beauty sleep," he snapped. "She has the real demanding day tomorrow, not you." I swallowed hard. "I have my final exam in 8 hours. He scoffed like that word meant trash. "Fake future," he said. "That's what you have. Fake future, fake potential, fake usefulness. Brielle actually matters in this family." Then, before I could even move back, he grabbed the back of my chair and shoved it, slamming my forehead forward into the desk. Not graphic, not bleeding, but jarring enough my ears rang and everything felt suddenly far away for a moment. Dad leaned over me and whispered in my ear, slow and poisonous, "She needs sleep. Shut your books. Shut your dreams. Nothing you do will ever compete with her." I didn't say one word. I just sat frozen while he grabbed my textbooks off the table and snapped them shut like punishment. He walked upstairs proudly, like he protected the queen. I sat there shaking, not just from what happened, but from the brutal truth that the man whose DNA I carry believed I was worthless, compared to a girl who spent her entire life chasing validation on Instagram. I closed my laptop slowly. Each movement felt like betrayal against myself. But I didn't sleep. I didn't cry. I wrote flash notes silently in my phone, memorizing formulas with my heart pounding like a bomb, because in that moment, something inside me shifted forever. This was the night I realized that I wasn't staying in this family because I loved them. I was staying because trauma trained me to. They believed they killed my future that night. I decided that night they would never control another chapter of it again. The next morning, my alarm went off at 7:00 a.m., but I was already awake. I never actually slept. My eyes burned like fire, my head still felt heavy from where it hit the table, and every muscle in my shoulders felt locked. But I got up anyway. I showered silently, tied my hair up, put on a simple black hoodie and jeans, grabbed my backpack and walked downstairs like nothing happened. I didn't look toward the kitchen because I could already hear Mom frying eggs just for Brielle like some royal chef. I grabbed a granola bar from the cabinet and headed for the door quietly. Before I could leave, Dad stepped out from behind the hallway like a guard blocking an exit. "You better not embarrass this family today with your weird behavior," he said. "Don't go to campus acting emotional or unstable. People notice." He was rewriting the narrative before anything even happened. Mom chimed in without turning toward me. Your little exam doesn't change anything. Brielle is the one with real future potential. We don't need you to panic and ruin her wedding week energy. Brielle walked downstairs wearing sunglasses inside like she was a celebrity. Be back before 5, she said casually. I booked nail appointments and you're driving me. I looked at her slowly. No, I said, calm, soft, controlled. I'm not your driver anymore. She blinked like she literally couldn't compute those words being said to her. Dad took a step forward like he was about to lunge again. I didn't ask for your opinion, he snapped. You do what keeps this house running, not what you want. I didn't argue. I didn't explain myself. I just walked out the door. On the entire drive to campus, I felt this strange, numb clarity. My brain wasn't spinning. My mind wasn't bargaining. I wasn't begging myself to understand them anymore. I knew exactly what they were, and I knew exactly what I was going to do after this exam was over. I walked into campus clutching coffee like it was an oxygen tank. My friends saw the bruise, forming lightly above my brow, and asked what happened, but I just shook my head. I wasn't ready to talk about it yet. Talking about it made it smaller somehow. What happened last night was bigger than just violence. It was identity assassination. When they passed out the exam papers, I stared at the first page and my brain tried to fog up. But I forced myself to breathe slow, one question at a time, one calculation at a time. Every formula I whispered silently in the dark last night somehow stuck in my brain like it fused with survival instinct. Halfway through the exam, I felt something break inside me, not like a breakdown, like a breakout, like I wasn't studying to pass a test anymore. I was studying to leave them permanently. 2 hours later, I finished before the timer hit 0. When I walked out of that exam room, I didn't feel weak. I felt dangerous. I sat on a bench outside campus and called my friend Chloe, the only friend who knew every poisonous detail about my family environment. My sister's wedding is this weekend, I said quietly, and I'm done letting them control anything about my life after this. Chloe didn't hesitate 1 second. She said, Then this is where you start building your future, not theirs. Whatever you decide next, I support it. I'll help you. Her confidence in me felt like oxygen. That afternoon, I got an email from my professor. Grade posted. I passed. Top 12% of the entire class. I stared at that screen for a good minute, trying to process that I did this with no sleep, no support, no space, no encouragement, just pure stubborn will. I texted Chloe a screenshot. She replied, Your future isn't fake, it's real, and you earned it alone. I sat in that parking lot smiling to myself because something clicked. I didn't need their house anymore. I didn't need their approval. I didn't need their rules. And I sure as hell didn't need to behave small anymore just to keep peace in a kingdom built on cruelty. On the way home, I didn't drive slow. I didn't fear their reaction. I walked in the door, not as their punch bag, their chauffeur, their downgraded daughter. I walked in the door as a woman who had already mentally left them. Mom looked irritated instantly because I didn't tiptoe. Dad looked up from his phone, waiting for me to apologize for existing. Brielle smiled because she thought she still owned me. Go get dressed, she commanded casually. We're doing rehearsal photos at 6, and you need to fix your face. You look tired. I stared at her blankly. That moment right there, that was the last moment any of them would ever speak to me like I didn't matter, because the revenge I was planning wasn't quiet, wasn't soft, and wasn't poetic. It was real-world consequences they'd never see coming. I walked into the student affairs office with my backpack slung over one shoulder and my bruise still faintly visible under concealer. And I did. Something I'd never done before. I spoke like someone who expected to be heard. I handed the assistant my phone with photos and a written timeline, and the way she read it made her color drain. We'll get you to the dean, she said, fast and clinical. That phrase, spoken in a neutral administrative voice, felt like a key sliding into a lock. The dean's office was quiet and sunlit. I sat across from a woman in a navy suit who didn't flinch when I told her exactly what happened the night before my exam. The shove, the slam into the desk, the words my father had used to erase me. I gave her the names of witnesses, the messages my dad had sent afterward, the bruise photo, the audio of him denigrating me when he thought no one else was listening. I also handed over a statement from my friend Chloe, who'd seen my dad try to drag me out the door the previous week. She didn't promise revenge. She promised process. Within 48 hours, the university opened a conduct review. That review was not a TV courtroom. It was an administrative mechanism with real teeth. The university issued an immediate no-contact directive and campus ban for both my parents, effective immediately. They were not permitted to access campus buildings, student events, or any university-affiliated ceremonies. If they tried to enter campus, security would escort them off the grounds. That meant something small to them on paper and everything in practice. They could not show up to my graduation. They could not harangue professors. They could not use university contacts to pressure me. The dean also connected me with a counseling center and with a student emergency housing fund that covered a campus apartment for me while I finished final projects and prepared for final interviews. It was administrative, quiet, and devastating to a family that ran on appearances and access. But my plan had two parts. The first was institutional safety. The second was personal leverage. 2 days later, I walked into my final career fair with a presence that felt like a new spine. I wore the same hoodie I'd worn the night before. I wore it like armor. I spoke to recruiters with calm precision about internships and entry-level analyst programs. One recruiter from a national firm, somebody who worked in the city my parents always bragged about visiting, leaned in when I explained my final project and asked for a follow-up interview. I took that weekend interview while the university's review ran in the background. I answered questions the way I'd disciplined myself to answer everything, with clarity, competence, and a refusal to let their noise become my script. 2 weeks later, I had an offer, a paid rotational program that included relocation assistance and a start date after graduation. It was the kind of opportunity my father always said people like me couldn't get. That offer changed the math in my life and in theirs. Because while the university ban removed their access to my school world, the job and relocation created a real, fast pathway out of their orbit. A new apartment, a salary that covered more than ramen, a professional identity that could not be erased by a family whisper campaign. When my parents tried to use their social contacts to intimidate the firm, calling an old friend of Dad's who worked in the company's vendor network, the HR rep politely redirected them to legal and compliance. The company verified my credentials, called references who spoke to my professional conduct on campus and at internships, and told my parents their calls were inappropriate. My parents' usual leverage, the ability to call and cajole people into doing favors, fizzled against corporate procedure. At the ceremony where my sister's classmates lined up to take photos and sip champagne, I watched as security politely intercepted my parents as they attempted to enter campus. They argued and demanded, but security read the ban and escorted them off the property. They stood on the sidewalk shouting about family and respect, but most of the guests turned away. The moment had no viral headline. It had no dramatic courtroom scene. It had something quieter and far crueler for people who lived on social currency, invisibility where they expected applause. My dad's attempts to leverage his local volunteer board membership backfired when the board chair received an anonymous but documented complaint about his behavior and asked him to step back from public-facing roles during their review. The board's concern was procedural. A member whose conduct created liability could not act as public representative. That removal didn't crash their life overnight, but it stripped away the communal pedestal they loved to stand on and invite friends to admire. The final act I took was intentionally practical. I signed the job contract. I took the relocation package. I applied for an off-campus apartment through the firm's relocation coordinator and set a moving date 2 weeks after graduation. I told my parents in a short text, "I will be leaving on July 2nd. Do not contact my HR. Do not come to campus. I will handle my life now." They called, screamed, texted threats about reputation and family honor. I let them. because their threats were impotent next to a paid desk in a city where I had colleagues and a public transit card and a bank account that answered to me. On graduation day, my name was called. I walked across that stage, and I felt something settle that had never settled before. Not triumph in a dramatic sense, but a thin, steady satisfaction. I had passed my exam the night they tried to erase me. I had navigated the university's systems to protect myself. I had taken a job that paid for my move and built a life they could not order me out of. My revenge had not been spectacle, it had been design. They taught me that my future was fake. I made it real, operational, and outside their reach. They told the world I was unstable so they could control my life. I left them with the one thing people like my parents fear most: the silence that comes when the person they used to command no longer needs them, and the knowledge that their calls, their gossip, and their control now only touch an empty room. When I packed the last box in my car and drove away for good, I didn't gloat. I put a smile on because it felt normal to smile when the engine started. Behind me, my parents watched the taillights disappear, and the house that used to hold my defeats sounded suddenly smaller. Please subscribe to our channel and tell us in comments from where are you watching this video.